traditional publishers. Okay, I'll try to keep the cussing down then, I guess. Uh, so, I'm not sure where that takes you, Susan, but that's my background. I have done both nonfiction and fiction, all traditionally published. I've gotten an advance on each one, and they've all been with an agent. So I guess that might be the very first question, an important question. A traditional publisher does not do this to help you out. You probably know it's a business. They do it for money, which means by definition, your book has to be commercial. It's not just, hey, the cool thing, I met my spouse in Vietnam and those military stories that are big hits in Thanksgiving and Christmas parties, and 11 people love that book. It needs to be for like 11,000. You need to have demand. So I guess that'd be my first thing that I would say, and I'm saying it fairly strongly. Uh, Traditional publishers do it for money. They give you an advance and they expect to make money out of them. It's also true about 6 out of 10 traditional published books do not make the money. They do not earn back. So it's a crapshoot. So they try real hard and they work very much for your benefit, and they invest a lot of money in your book because they believe it will sell. So first and foremost, you have to have an idea, a big idea, a strong hook, has to be high concept, interesting characters, great prose, an ending that is surprising yet satisfying, and all of that. That would be my first 2 minute spiel. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but and I will also say I've never done it non-traditionally. I've never done it, the Amazon self-published way. And frankly, well, I'm 67 years old now. I don't know any other way. I wouldn't want to do it that way. This is just me. I have no idea what a book cover should or should not be, and I'm just not in that business, and I couldn't possibly tell. I don't want to do the promotions for it. I want an expert to do that for me. I want the expert editing and the expert in the cover art. So for me, this model works very well, but it does require that you have a big idea. Each book has to be a strong hook. You grab the reader by the throat and never let go, and that's what they're hoping for.
That's a good beginning. Thank you. And I'll have people ask you questions if they have them. But I just wanted to back up and say we are recording this because we would like for the rest of our guild to have access to it, or you can review it as at your leisure on our website. So thank you, Lee, for doing that. Secondly, sometimes I know that people have, not always, it's a rare shot, but people have published on Amazon. The book has sold so well that they were picked up by a traditional publisher, and then the book exploded. So that's kind of like an interesting story. Doesn't always work for everyone, of course. It's a small amount of people that happen. There are other publishers that are small presses, and some of those are published by university presses. Apparently, over the years, scholarly publications at universities were there, and then they have this resource, the presses themselves and the staff to some extent, of publishing what they call trade books, which is mostly what we're doing, I suspect. And those trade books in each university has to be fitting their mission. And they have often a group of people who will be peer reviewers to see if that's going to, one, fit the mission of that university, or and fit the mission of the actual press. So that's an opportunity. You don't need agents, but agents actually have acquired those connections, that press, with the presses. Case in point, I had an editor, Kate Kate Hopper, who helped me with some editing just as a freelance situation. And she was published, her one book was published by University of Minnesota Trade Book Press. And she had an agent that brought her to that. Now, you don't need that for these university presses. And I had a friend of mine published several books that were published by universities that were big ideas for the university's mission. One was the University of West Virginia, I believe, West Virginia University Press, for Black men in particular in sports. And that was part of their mission. So the gentleman that I know, the author that I know, was published there. So those are exceptions, but definitely opportunities. If your book, like maybe Harry Barnes was writing about a war, it's fictional, it's taken from his background, but some place like that might fit, something like that might fit a university press. So those are, I would just Google university press, whatever, and they actually have a whole sheet of what each press covers and doesn't cover.
That's really interesting. I wanted to say that uh, when we think of poetry, it's really hard to get uh, published by, a traditional publisher. Although I was hoping Deanna would be here because her book, Companions Along the Way, I noticed was published by Onion River Press in Burlington, Vermont. So this is a small local publisher. I believe she lives in either Vermont or New Hampshire. She's a snowbird down here. But sometimes small presses will publish poetry. When I looked up traditional presses of poetry, the poet had to have a big resume. They had to be published by several magazines, anthologies, they had to, or online, they had to have won prizes. So uh, I think, a new poet starting out, perhaps not us old folks, but should develop that, and it's sort of like a resume that you put together in order to get to where you want to go in the future. So that would be my suggestion. I was hoping Harry would be here because he has been picked up by traditional publishers. And Ed White, who was a member of our guild and passed away last year, had 3 or 4 books picked up by a traditional publisher. So he was able to market that quite well. I don't know how he did with royalties or anything. I've never asked him, but he he was an amazing person who had a fantastic imagination and was able to write very well. Um, so other people who have published traditionally, I can't think of anybody right now.
And one of your comments about picking up a book with poetry and looking at the publisher is a great idea if you think, some local or smaller publisher might be willing, if you're willing. And to Mike's point about not having to do it all, you can hire experts in that area. It's out of pocket money, of course, but if you want that, they could help you with the book cover, or they could help you edit the book, or they could help you with a table of contents, an index, whatever you need. There are experts out there with reputations that you have to follow up on. Just like hiring, a plumber, you have to follow up and find out how they were received. So thanks for bringing that up. Go
Well,
ahead,
I think
Lee.
that, oh, go ahead, Lee. Sorry.
And Ruthie and I, ours was not traditionally published. It was on Amazon. But Harry gave me the name of a person he used who actually set it up. And so it was because we had illustrations on every page. It was a children's book with a poem that runs throughout. And so there's that kind of help too. Um, I have a question for Mike. In traditional publishing, two questions really. One was, did the nonfiction get you a step in for your fiction? You know, they already knew about your writing. So, and the other was, do you have to have an agent to get a traditional publisher like that?
Yeah, good questions. Do you have to have an agent to get a traditional publisher? I know 80% of traditional publishers require an agent, and those are the big ones. Those are the imprints that you know. The 20% that do not require an agent, the largest is a press called Kensington, and they do about 100, 150 books a year, and they don't require an agent, and they are the biggest, and they are small. I mean, compared to, Penguin or Random House. So, do you have to have an agent? Actually, no. You can get a very little press, a very small publisher that has, quite frankly, they can't compete with Macmillan and whatever. They are just little. I mean, by definition, doesn't mean they're not good. Doesn't mean they won't help and do a good job, but they're going to sell 5,000 copies, 10,000 copies, they hope. That's a big book for them. 5,000 copies is a big book for them. Someone like, Tor or certainly Penguin Random House, 5,000 copies is insulting. It's got to be three or
Mhm.
four or five times that, or they're not even going to touch it. So, do you have to have an agent? I say yes. I say if you want to get traditionally published, you have to have an agent. I strongly suggest, and maybe we ought to have a call about how to get an agent if that's the
Yeah,
route you want to take.
yeah.
Is
Are you
sorry.
still, go ahead. Were
Um,
you saying?
so my first two books were nonfiction, and they were about marketing analytics because that's what my 30-year career in the corporate environment was. And my first novels, I write thrillers, mystery, and suspense. My first novels were all about the marketing analyst, surprise, surprise. He's a protagonist, and he's trying to find a kidnapper or an arsonist or a terrorist, and he uses marketing analytic techniques to find the bad guy because the police typical forensics did not work. And what do you know? Marketing analytics and segmentation and prediction help find the bad guy. And so that was kind of a because that was unique. They had never had a marketing analyst as a protagonist catching a kidnapper. That's a kind of a rare thing, and it was always a fish out of water story, that kind of thing. So it kind of did help, but because I went through the editing process, I was aware of it. I think that kind of helped. And I would say too, one thing to get traditionally published, as Susan has already mentioned, to get traditionally published means you don't own the book. They buy the book. And if you can't stand the idea that they're going to change your sacrosanct prose, that's not for you. They will absolutely do their own book cover. I myself don't want to, and I can't. They do show me the cover, but it was always, we'll let you see it. But by the way, this is what we're going with. This is what we're doing. And I suppose if I really had a problem, maybe they would listen, but they're under no obligation. And I will also say, and this is important, yes, you can hire an editor. The process is you have an acquisition editor and then you have a development content editor, and you go back and forth. And every experience I've had, that development content editor was invested in my book. Surprising. They really wanted to make it better, and they did make it better. And then you go to a line editor, and that's where you get the spelling and punctuation. Plus, they do the house rules. Some publishing houses require certain styles. I mean, I remember my first novel, I wrote 9 p.m., capital P, capital M, and their house style was little p period, little m period. So anyway, they know the style. And then there's a cross editor, some editor from some other department that just simply reads your book. So you've had four people in that publishing house that have read your book, And I absolutely will say, because my editor was invested in my book, they literally made it better, not just mechanically better, but they would brainstorm with me and they went back and forth and they would challenge this and maybe cut this out, and they were emotionally invested in my story, which surprised me a little bit. So I don't know that I could hire a contracting editor for that. Maybe I could, but like I said, I've never done it the other way, and my experience has been extremely positive, and uh, I would strongly recommend that way. If you have a book that has that kind of audience, I think that's the way to go. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Karen has her hand up. Karen?
Yes, Mike, I'm glad that you mentioned about the agent because that was my question right out the gate. How do you go about getting an agent?
Well, it requires sexual favors and a lot of cash you bribe them with, but I won't go into detail. No, no, well, as a matter of fact, that's an extremely good question because the same way you get a publisher, a traditional publisher, is the way you get an agent. They both want the same thing. They want a sellable book. So talking from the fiction point of view, and just you probably know, uh, um, a novel is sold with a complete story. You can't sell a partial novel. You have to have the whole thing written. Unless you're Stephen King, they buy a complete novel. But that's not true for nonfiction. Matter of fact, they really don't want a complete nonfiction. They want a proposal. They want you to write 2 or 3 chapters, and then they want a proposal, and you got to sell them on your big idea, and they want to help you craft and target that nonfiction proposal to their house. So they typically buy nonfiction on a proposal, not a complete story. But talking about fiction, you get an agent the same way you get a publisher. You have to have a query letter, and it has to be good. And you have to have a synopsis, and it has to be good. And then you have to have the first. Typically, they ask for the first 10 pages. That's pretty common. Sometimes 5 pages, sometimes 20 pages. So the proposal, the fiction proposal, is a query letter, and then it's a synopsis, and then it's 10 pages, and they have to be good. There has to be an obvious story. They typically ask for comps, both fiction and nonfiction. They ask that's for 4 or 5 books in the last 4 or 5 years that is comparable to your story. And that's how they estimate your advance. That's one way they estimate your advance. How many sales did these comps get? And if those comps were great and they agree with you, and of course the agent is there hitting them over the head saying, "Yeah, this is a good book. You need to acquire it," and that's how they estimate your advance, and that's how they decide to take it take it or not. So I think that's the answer, Karen. You send a query letter, a synopsis in the first 10 pages, and they have to be knockouts, and get beta readers. Obviously, get a bunch of beta readers and get. I think the things that young writers do wrong more than anything else is they send it out too early. They just finished it. Their spouse loves it. Their parents love it. Their kids love it. And those 4 or 5 family members or close friends loved your book and nobody else sees it. You need to have a professional see it. You need to have beta readers who know what they're doing, who understand story, and they can be objective and they can tell you, man, this thing sucks. Right here in the middle, I just went to sleep. It just put me asleep, and I don't know how to fix it, but that's the problem. It drags in the middle, and you need to go through editing probably 10 times more than you would think you do, again and again and again, until you have it almost memorized and you can't stand it anymore, because by then you're writing your next book and you send that out and you compete with everybody else.
So where do you find the agents to query? Do you just Google, how do I get an
Yeah,
agent?
there's 1,000 ways now. There used to be Literary Marketplace would write a book every year of fiction writers and all the agents, and that would list the agents. But that's not so common anymore. Matter of fact, I recommend Query Tracker. That's free. Of course, it has the subscription you can buy, but it's free and it lists all the agents. And first off, all these agents, they've signed the AARP, not AARP. They signed the whatever the acronym is for agents who agree to a certain ethical standard. It's not AARP, but, but it's something like that. and they agree to certain standards and certain ethics. It's called Query Tracker, Query, and then I think it's Tracker. And there's a tab for agents, and then you tell them I'm writing a novel, and by the way, it's fiction and nonfiction. But in my case, I say I'm writing a novel, it's a thriller, and they'll list them all out. And then you go to each of those websites one by one, and you look up that agent. And almost all agents, even on their website, will give a manuscript wish list, and they will say what they've sold before and what they're looking for, and they will say how to submit. And they will say, I want the first 10 pages. I want to know your background. I want to know, whatever the query letter is. Uh, and then you go through that. Um, I would advise that your query letter says on sentence one, I'm querying you because. Do not write, dear agent. That's a very bad thing. Right? Dear Marianne, I'm querying you because I loved your client Ashley Elston's book First Lie Wins. My protagonist is kind of like that, and I thought you might be interested in my book. And by the way, that's one of my comps. And it's a long process. I would not want to go through the querying process myself. That's painful. I would not want to have a newborn baby and raise a baby right now. That's very painful, and it's the same thing. I'm too old to do that again. It's just difficult, but it's a long, long process, and it's worthwhile. By the time you find somebody, an agent who's in your court, it's I mean there's nothing like it. I admire and respect my agent I've had for 11 years now, and she has been there with me and helped me and given suggestions and ideas that would never have occurred to me. It has been a great business relationship for us. I believe she would say that also. I don't know, maybe she wouldn't, but I have certainly enjoyed working with her. And to answer your question, you start somewhere and you go down the list one by one by one. It's like a job. In a lot of ways, it's like finding a job
Yeah.
because it seems like they're working for you, and from a business point of view, legally they are working for you, but really you work for her, and it is almost entirely her. 95% of agents are females, uh, and uh, go down one by one and find the right one. Find the one who loves your book. Find the one who understands what you're trying to do, and it's a very profitable, emotionally and not quite financially maybe, but it is emotionally profitable. Yeah.
Can I ask Mike, is that done by snail mail or by email?
No, no one does snail mail today. Snail
Okay,
mail almost does not exist. I mean, no, it's all email. Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Actually, they won't even look at,
Right. Right.
open up the
Right.
manuscript if
Right.
it's mailed.
Yeah.
And one of the important things, there are free YouTube 45-minute lessons on how to do this, how to write a good synopsis, how to write a good query letter, how to write a good proposal, what is a platform, how to do that. Yeah, all of those things are free to us, and you can pay also, which I have done all of that. So I'm like, it's out there. It's just a matter of time, as Mike said. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, and you mentioned that you did publishing on Amazon.
Yes.
Okay, so my question to you is, I contacted them and they say, for approximately $1,000, they'll give you the world. Is this what you went through, or am I?
I did not contact Amazon per se. It's called KDP Publishing. Um, it's free. You have to have the manuscript and the cover, and then you decide on the price, and you get minimal royalties from that. The only reason I do it like that is that the books I'm writing are for a limited niche audience,
Yep.
and it's cheap for me to buy author copies on Amazon. So, you know, I don't price my book at probably what it's worth. If I price it at $5.95, it costs me like a little over $2 for author copies. So if I want to buy 50 or 100 copies to give away or to use at presentations or something, it's an inexpensive way for me to get a book. And I've done that with a short memoir, with a book about cancer to caring, a poetry book, a book about travels, and most of these are poetry or poetry in in a narrative. I'm in the process of doing that now. And to Mike's point, I had three beta readers. Two were from the guild who gave me uh, the information I wanted about flow. Did it meet the theme? The third person I did not realize worked as an editor. And although uh, she didn't charge me anything, and I will send her a monetary thank you, um, she went through and did copy editing and also made suggestions. Now, this is poetry, so it's quite different. It's poetry with a narrative. So, the book that I published earlier was strictly poetry. This is the next iteration of that. And I think it will be more explanatory for those people. So, so I think you went to the wrong place, Wes, but there are others, and I heard of one the other day, but I didn't write it down, that do what KDP does.
So, yeah, because the the guy I went to, I mean, they all sound alike. They they do the editing, they do the book cover, they do this. I'm really not that interested in making money as much as just putting it out there, something that could be interesting for young readers, because it's probably more meant for a young reader, say that's into sports, that maybe be between the age of 12 and 15.
Yeah.
Or
Well, I think also that there are some non-traditional publishers, they're more like printers, who will charge you like $1,000 to do everything that you want to do. They'll put it in the format, they'll do you a cover and so forth. Do I know their names? No, but I get emails from them all the time.
yeah, I have 100 of them that have been called.
Yeah, so that might be the easiest way if you don't want to invest time in doing something that you have to do all yourself.
Right. Okay.
So,
Uh, Sorry, uh, just to uh, day after tomorrow, we're going on vacation, and my wife is letting me know that I have not done something very important. Uh, probably the whole Canadian government won't let us in with whatever I'm supposed to do. So I'd be happy to answer if I can. If you have a question about traditional publishing, particularly with an agent, I'd be glad to tell you anything that's helpful. But if it's some other subject, I'm probably going to bomb out here in a moment. Is there anything else I can answer, or have you heard all the bad news that there is?
Karen?
What kind of royalties do you get from the traditional publisher and advances?
So how old are you? No, sorry. You never ask a woman her age, and you never ask a writer his royalties. No, that's not true. Well, there's that. I'll be glad to tell you, but it's not an easy question. Uh, First off, there's a difference between digital and print. Uh, Print is, and I have four contracts, but print is, I believe it's 12% for the first 5,000, and then I think it's 14% between 5,000 and 20,000. And so it's a sliding scale. So it's something like 14%. And that's 14% uh, of non-redeemables, 14% of non-returnables. And then the digital is far more because the price is typically less. I think it's 25% for um, digital and then 30% on a sliding scale. Audiobooks are very high. They're like 50%. And as soon as I get a movie deal, uh, that will be the end of the line. I'll drink adult beverages only, and we'll be through with that. So.
Do you hope that you're going to get
Oh
a
yeah,
movie deal?
of
I
course,
mean,
absolutely.
does it, I mean, it sounds like to me it could make a great movie, but do you think the prospects are pretty high on that?
I have to think that.
Mhm.
Statistically, there's no way in hell that will happen. No, but I have to. I've already cast it. I know who's gonna play. I don't mind the director. I guess there's a couple of people that could direct, but I know uh, who I want to play the leading man and certainly the leading woman. I intend on being part of the interview process and casting process for her. I'm going to put that in my contract. I have to be in the room when we cast the leading lady, and my wife cannot be in the county when that happens. That is my
I love it. I love it.
Well, I'm rooting for you.
thank you.
That sounds great, Mike. That actually, you got to start with the vision.
Yep,
Mhm.
yep, sure.
That's
Yep,
where you start.
yep.
That's the passion part. Okay, anybody else want to ask Mike?
Well, I will say Martin has had books published, whether they were by a traditional publisher or a university, I'm not sure. Martin, did you want to speak up here?
Yeah. I've got a lot to say, but it's not typical. Uh, Mike, it's really fascinating to get a look at what the publishing business or industry is like now. I'm going to be 88 in a week, and I've got a lot of writing under my skin here.
Yeah.
Uh, my first books were published in the 1960s, and I it's hard to say everything that I've done because I've done an awful lot. I've had my own publishing company that I started in the 1970s. I published a lot of books. You can look me up on internet or something like that, and Amazon and Smashwords and now I'm playing with fiction, and I think I do a good job with it, but I've never published very much. Well, I have published fiction in I'm a marine biologist, and I've published in magazines a good bit, and uh, I let's see, it's hard to express where it is I am and where I'm going, but I'm going there as fast as I can.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether I want to get involved in this. I published my own books way back when in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and we did pretty well with them. One of my books is um, the Marine Aquarium Handbook, and it says. Anyway, somewhere here it says well anyway I published them myself, and they say it's the most uh, best-selling marine aquarium book there ever was.
Yay.
And I've done other stuff too like that, but now what I'm doing is playing with fiction. I've got about 6 novels that are halfway finished each one, and they're interesting and they're different because I don't I do what I think is interesting and what I think is really neat. I'm writing a fiction book now about occupying Mars, which is kind of different and unusual. And whether anything will ever happen with them or not, I don't know, because I have more interest in doing the writing than doing the selling or doing
Amen.
the building things up. But eventually, I guess I've got to do something like that. Certainly before I'm 95. Uh, and it's very interesting though to see what the world is like now, because it was very much different long ago.
And Martin, this is Wes. You ticked a very interesting box for me. I happen to volunteer at the aquarium, the Moat Aquarium, and I'm very involved over there. And when you mentioned your background, I'd love to be able to talk with you on a personal level. Is there any way we can contact one another?
Well, mostly I do email
Okay.
because I can answer that whenever I have the time to do so or whenever. So and my uh,
Well, all of this information is on our website, Wes. If you go there,
yeah,
you'll see his contact information.
Okay.
yeah, sure, I'll be happy to talk with you, and to uh, answer questions or ask questions, either
Good.
one.
Yeah, I'd like to pick your brains a little bit and share some of my background because I was a high school biology teacher. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've done some of that too.
yeah, I figured you may have.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody want to share their experience? Karen?
I just had a question. I saw that Mike dropped off. I'd like to look up his book. It sounds really interesting, but what is his last name?
Grigsby.
Griggs
Grigsby with an S somewhere in there, BY.
SB. Okay, I'm gonna look up his books. Thank you.
Sure, good idea.
Well, and
And
I think that's important too. I know we had a speaker who was a member who talked about literacy citizenship. And what she meant by a lot of that is writers supporting other writers. So reading their books, writing their books, putting comments on whatever platform they're featured at, sending them emails, just being there for one another and mentoring, like, if you can, or just being a support, I think is really as important as anything else in our membership, because it really helps. And writers are are alone a lot, and if okay, I can send this to Susan and she'll give me her good take, or tell me forget about it. And that helps, and it helps in the process. So think about that when you're doing all this.
sounds like you've got either your answers or maybe you're disappointed with the amount of time and effort that it takes to get through to a publisher. But I would encourage you to, if you do have a big idea, um, just kind of Google some of the smaller publishers or the university presses and see if that has something for you. Or, as Mike said, you definitely need an agent to get into the big publishers. I had experience as a textbook editor in years and years ago, and pretty much it was the marketplace, and Mike would probably confirm this. It was the marketplace that drove who we chose. We went through three sets of eh, um, authors to get what we thought was our market, because some of the authors were out here with the science texts, some of them were out here. We had our vision of the marketplace, and in some respect, that's the case also, I think, with trade books and maybe university presses. They kind of know what they want, and it's up to us to kind of do at least a little research and then maybe send a query letter out. Is this something you would want? They're very good about responding. The big publishers and the agents aren't, they're just swamped with so much. And they're usually saying 12 weeks at least for us to get to you. And if they don't say anything to you, forget it. So it's that crowded right now. I think COVID put everybody in the writing
Yeah.
chair.
Well, you have to have a thick skin to be able to do this. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to be able to accept rejection and criticism and keep your passion in the forefront, or you get beaten down quickly, I'm sure. I mean, it hasn't happened to me personally, but I know others who have been that route. So, well, it's 10:46. If everybody is finished, we can close this meeting. But I don't want to close off conversation with if on the topic, but I think we need to stay on topic today.
And could you give me the contact for the Writers Club? So you said I can get
Oh,
if
suncoastwriters.com, is it, Lee? Yes, suncoastwriters.com. And then as a member, you have to set up your username and password. And when you do that, then you will be able to get in and see the whole roster. You'll be able to look at all of these programs that we have. You'll be able to see the list of writers and their books that have given us that.
Okay, thank you.
I see Ginny has just joined us. Ginny, we're
No,
almost finished.
I've been here.
Oh,
I've
you
been
have
here,
been.
but
Okay, I'm sorry we
I'm,
didn't see you.
it's more of a learning experience for me today. So I've been listening and writing intently.
We'll have this available in the website as a recording if you want to look at it again.
Yes, I
I
will.
think Mike has had a lot of experience to offer, so I appreciate that he showed up. I know he's getting ready for British Columbia
Oh,
vacation. Yeah, nice place to go.
Um, I'd like to tell Wes about something that I did about 20 years ago, but it was really quite interesting. Uh, there's an awful lot of interest in oceanic life, fishing, diving, all of this sort of thing. And I started with, I could try to find it and pull it out, but yeah, that may take too long. But what I started to do was to write a series of articles for the fishing magazines. And I would take the life cycle of a particular fish, in my case, groupers. I did some really basic work on the biology of red groupers. Anyway, and I would take the biology of the fish itself, and from the time of the actual reproduction of the male and the female, and the development of the egg, and the development of the larval fish, and the development of the larval fish, all the way through to to completion, and yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble these days finding the right word at the right time. but when you get to be my age, you kind of expect that. So if I stutter a little bit here and there, it's not because I don't know what I'm talking about. It's because I don't know that I'm talking. And and anyway, what I did was I gave a particular fish a name, and I created a fictional world, and that fish grew up in the world in that particular thing. And I went through the entire life history of that particular fish and how it went and what I think I did uh, a different species also as well. And it was quite a hit. And people began to mimic what I did with other things in other ways. And I got first place in some of the clubs that I was with at that particular time. But it was a new twist on marine biology, on how and the fish. I didn't make it fake. I made it exactly in the way the life history of that particular species was, and I didn't try to humanize the individuals that I talked about or that I just described what they were going through in the life of that particular animal, that particular fish. And I think that it got a lot of good reports and a lot of people. There were several writers that were coming in and doing the same thing on other species, which was kind of interesting in itself. And that particular methodology of not exactly humanizing an animal or some structure, whether it be plant or animal, but it was a way of giving the understanding of the biology of that animal, of that fish, of that or that situation, and giving it, creating it in an interesting and life story way, but still keeping it biologically accurate. And I've always wanted to do more in that way, in that area, but I haven't done that yet. But I thought I might mention it, and you might find it of interest at some point.
Well, I have a very interesting story to tell you, which is similar to what you were talking about. As I said, I volunteer at the aquarium, and one of my favorite things to talk about is the giant squid.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I have learned all about the giant squid as far as his biology and life and everything. But what I do sometimes is when I have a large audience around me of maybe 20, 30 people all around this large giant squid, I become the giant squid and I tell the life of it in first person.
Oh, yeah. That's the same sort of thing.
And it's the same sort of thing. And I get the best reaction. I get applause and like you couldn't believe. It's almost like being an actor. And I've done acting on stage a little bit. So I actually bring that into my performance and I get tremendous reactions from people when I become the squid. So it's very similar to what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. This, yeah, this is one book that I wrote on lobsters. It's a Florida lobster. And the first part of it is the natural history, the life cycle. And that goes all the way through the beginning of life, and it follows an individual all the way through from the early development. Maybe you can see something there, maybe not. But anyway, the early development of that species all the way through. And that book sold quite well.
Yeah.
Back then, we had our own publishing company, Green Turtle Publications, and I went through the whole bit, the writing, the printing, the renting a little area where you had your books in one of these little sheds uh, a shopping center of some sort where you kept the books and then you sent them out as you sold them. And it was back then, that was in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And those days are over now, though. All of a sudden, this thing came in, which they called um, the computer, I think it was. Yeah. And and then all of the different programs that you could go onto the computer and find information that you ordinarily would have to buy a book for to do that. But anyway,
Yeah,
it was
but
quite a time.
Martin, the information you were given is so well received in a story format. So, it, even though Google is giving us information, we can put it in a story format. In
Right.
fact, that's exactly what I'm doing with
Yeah.
my memoir.
Uh-huh.
Exactly
Yeah,
what I'm doing. Yeah.
and if you do it well and you make it understandable and interesting all the way through, it's worth doing, very definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk to you, Martin, about writing a story about a giant squid.
Yeah. Well, that
I,
would be interesting.
I think we could do something. I mean, Jules Verne did it, so I don't know why we
Yeah.
can't do the.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
That's
here
true.
we go with collaboration.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Well, you could do it with everything from a cockroach to a giant squid
Right.
and a whale in there too.
Susan, did you
I
have
think there's a lot
anything
of
else you
possibilities for
wanted
that.
to?
No,
Susan,
except thank you all for coming. Thank you for your questions. And maybe some passion was struck. That was great. If not, you can cross traditional publishing off your list or not. So keep us in. As soon as I get something, I will let you know because I'm plugging
wonderful.
along. I'm plugging along. Martin, in some ways, what you talked about is exactly what I'm doing with my memoir is called a memoir plus, a learning memoir, a teaching memoir. And I take my background, which was human growth and development, I'm integrating it into my journey with my former spouse who had three comorbidities, dementia being one of them. And so we're kind of walking a 7-year path, and I'm helping, hopefully, the readers understand how they can reduce stress by their thinking. And I taught this for 20 plus years, not in that language. I just used what they call CBT, cognitive development therapy, in teaching people in the workplace how to think differently and how to work with change and how to deal with conflict and how to deal with their lifestyle balance. So that is what I'm incorporating, just like you are, or you did, your background into a animated of
Yeah,
sorts, a
yeah,
human person's story.
yeah,
And so they're getting that. It's in the story, it's woven in.
yeah, yeah.
And I
So
would
in a way,
encourage all of you. In
it's
fact,
fiction,
why,
but it's accurate.
youth, the youth books for ages, 8 through 14, that is excellent. And I did science textbook publishing, Wes, and I would recommend, you might even be able to sell that to a textbook publisher. Get that
Yeah,
story ready.
Yeah,
Get
no,
that
yeah,
I'll
story
tell you
ready
what.
if
This is
you're interested.
that's what's good about this because it sort of whets your appetite into areas where I didn't even think about. I mean, I've written a synopsis on what I talk about, and I've written it out, and it's almost like a story, but it can be expanded just like Martin has into a whole book, starting from the egg and living among the kelp beds and his life as a baby squid and then growing up. And who knows? There's a submarine out there he could attack.
You personalize accurate information.
Yes.
Right, exactly. And that's the way kids get excited about learning. That's why I'm saying I think this is really cool for learning
Yeah.
in the classroom instead of a dull old textbook. And want to have stories about, a squid. I also appreciate the fact that you used your skills, presentation skills, your show off yourself skills in being the squid, the giant squid. I think that's great.
It takes a lot of energy, but I love doing it.
I know.
Yeah.
You get
It's
it
like,
back on the
yeah.
on the other side. I get it back because I have presented my stories to large audiences so I could show a publisher my platform. I have a background platform of doing this in work in nationwide insurance or whatever. But now I have a platform in doing it in front of caregivers. And then I showed them pictures in the proposal of them all hugging me. And that was the payoff, the hugging.
Yeah.
They're inspired. They're hearing something that appear, that they can relate to. And that's what you're doing. And I love that because I feel blessed to have connected with people like that on that level.
Well, I think it's an excellent way of being able to present critical information
Mhm.
in a way that is still accurate, but it is fictional in its complexity.
Yeah. Well, mine's not fictional, unfortunately,
Well,
but
yeah,
still, I'm giving the information about
yeah.
how to
Oh,
deal
yeah,
with hospice or how to deal with resentments or how to
exactly.
deal with, you know, guilt,
Yeah,
grief. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Anne, I'm gonna turn it back to you if you want to wrap this up.
Well, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for your comments, for your questions. This was a really interesting topic. And I think the members who couldn't make it today will obviously want to listen to this on our website. I think it was a really good topic. And so thank you very much. And you all have a wonderful afternoon and